Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to layer with our first exercise, which will be Finn from Finn and Jake. I've essentially made a file that has the different pieces of Finn's face all separated. So the goal of it is going to be to cut and paste each of those elements of Finn's face and then move around those elements to create the final image for Finn's face. The first thing that you want to do before you start with Photopea is go to Schoology and download the file for Finn. It should be called fin.jpg. That is the file that you're going to need to open on Photopea to get working. So I already have it downloaded. I'm going to open from my computer. When you open up Photopea, you'll see that it says open from my computer. It's going to then ask me to locate the file, and the beginning image should look like this. Once you've opened the image, you will see it on your canvas. You'll also notice that a new layer has popped up in the layer panel called background. The first piece of Finn's face that we want to trace is the eyes. For the eyes, we're going to use what's called the lasso tool. I'm going to zoom in even closer to the eyes. I'm going to hold my space bar and click and drag so I can get it nice and centered on my screen. And I'm going to now click on the lasso tool. This is your toolbar on the left side of your screen, and the lasso tool almost looks like a cowboy lasso. So if I zoom in, you can see it looks like an oval with this little squiggly line coming off of it. The shortcut for it on your keyboard is L, so you can also just press L on your keyboard to select the lasso tool. Now, to begin using it, you want to click and drag small areas at a time. So you want to select the whole eye piece by piece. I'm going to start by clicking and dragging and just getting a nice chunk out of the way, like so. Now, when I want to continue selecting, I'm going to need to hold Shift on my keyboard and continue selecting. I am also going to overlap into my last selection so that it combines with it. If you don't hold Shift while you're making a selection, what's going to happen is you're either going to start from inside the selection and you're going to see these 4 arrows come up and you're going to accidentally move your selection. If you're not starting from the inside of your selection, if you're starting from right here, but you're again not holding Shift while you do this, it's going to look like it's working. It will look totally fine, but then all of a sudden everything you've already done will disappear and it will start a new selection. So you want to make sure that you're holding Shift while you do this. If you make this mistake, it's totally okay. All you have to do is go to Edit and Undo. It'll step backward for you and it'll bring back the selection that you had before. I also want to mention the shortcut for undo is Command Z. I'm going to go ahead and select the whole thing holding Shift. I'm going to make this portion of the video go a little bit faster. If you want to slow it down, feel free. I want to pause right here and point out that I did make a little bit of a mistake. It's totally okay for you to make these kinds of mistakes because they are fixable. Notice that in this small area, my selection went into the gray. It went outside of the outline and went into the gray, so I want to delete that part of my selection. In order to do that, on your keyboard, you're going to hold the Alt or Option key, depending on what kind of computer you're using. If you're on the Chromebook, then you want to hold the Alt key, and if you're on a Mac, then you want to hold the Option key. So we're going to hold that down. And almost like we're cutting with scissors, we're going to just trace this gray area. And pull it out just like that. So now I'm going to just go ahead and continue with the rest of my selection, holding Shift. Now, if you have any pieces that are still remaining, it might look like this. This just means you have to select this large piece as well because you may have missed it. So I'm going to again hold Shift and just click and drag a big shape around this. If you need to go back and clean up your edges, because keeping it really clean is quite important, feel free to do so. I'm going to just go in and double check and make sure I did well. This looks pretty clean and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. The next step is to turn this eyeball into its own layer. To do so, there are two ways of doing it. The first way, which is the way that I recommend, is to cut and paste it. The reason that we're cutting it is because we no longer need the original image, so we can feel okay with deleting parts of the original image. To do that, we can just go to Edit at the top menu and go to Cut. Notice that the shortcut to cut is, for me, it's Command X. For anyone using a Chromebook or a PC, it's going to be Control X. Once I cut it, you can now see this transparent checkered background, which is totally fine. Before clicking anything else, you now want to go back to Edit and then click on Paste, which is, again, for PC and Chromebook users, Control V, as in Victor. Now you're going to notice that your selection has disappeared, and in the layer panel, a new layer has popped up, and by default, it's been called Layer 1. What we want to do early on and as we're working on our projects is go in and rename our layers as we make them. This process is going to make it a lot easier for us to organize our layers and know where everything is. So to rename your layer, you want to double click on the name and just type in what you'd like to call it. I'm going to call it Right Eye. Once you've named it, you can just press Enter on your keyboard and it will rename that layer to whatever you have typed. I would like to point out it is really important while you're working to save as you do so. It's important because if you ever lose power to your computer or anything like that goes wrong, you'll always have a backup file to go back to in case that does happen. To do that, you can just go to File and Save as PSD. Once you click that, it is going to download a file to your computer, which you can then continue off of if you ever find that you went through a power outage or you've lost power to your computer in general. If that happens and you need to revert back to a file that you've already made and saved, what you can do is go to File, Open, and go ahead and find the file that you downloaded previously. For mine, it is here. I can see it's called finoriginal.psd, so I can just open it and continue working where I left off. Later on, as you find that you've downloaded a few of these files which you don't need anymore because you've finished the project, you can go back into your downloads and begin deleting those old versions. At this point, you want to do the exact same thing to the other eye and the mouth. You want to start tracing it. Then you want to cut and paste it. Before I end this video, I do need to point out that when you are selecting the other elements of Finn's face, such as the eye and the mouth, when you have finished selecting it, you need to make sure before you cut it to click on the background layer. The reason being is because the original image of the eye is on the background layer. It is not on the right eye layer. So just make sure that you are clicked on background, then go to edit, cut, and edit, paste. Then you'll get your next layer, which is left eye. The only other thing that you need to do before moving on to the next video is do the same thing with the mouth. Once you're done with the left eye, the right eye, and the mouth, move on to the next video. I don't recommend using the lasso tool on the face and the mask.